Troy, what did you think of it as a guy, obviously a newer viewer to the show? What did you think of the fight? And were you glad you watched it in the end?
Yeah, so as I said the other day, boxing just isn't for me. When you come into combat sports with MMA being your entry point, I feel like it's hard to adjust to boxing. Obviously, I have great respect for boxing, but with MMA, it's everything. And so boxing is just hard for me. Like when the ref gets in between the guys so many times, I'm just like, let the guys fight. I hate those types of situations. Was it that entertaining? No. Were there moments? Yeah. More so, my big takeaway from this whole night was just how impressed I am with Jake in the sense that he took this just from an idea in his head and brought this to make it feel like a massive event. At the end of the day, this is just an exhibition match that means absolutely nothing. And he made an entire big spectacle of it. DAZN's in on, ESPN is in on it. Nate Diaz, one of the BMFs, is in on it. You got him to stand across from you and do business with you. That's my biggest takeaway from this. So, like, kudos to Jake Paul. This means nothing, but it's a tremendous accomplishment.
Such a good point, man. That is such a good point, because I think there were multiple times that you start to marvel at that. And he actually points it out too, right? He's always like, hey, man, if you're a kid at home and you want to do this, and I should be able to, I've been boxing for 3 years, I'm doing this. Now, obviously, he had a big name coming into the boxing world, but everybody expected him to fail or to not even take real fights. And I know that you could look at these as, well, he's not fighting real boxers and all this stuff, but you're absolutely right. When you've got Sean Porter and, guys like that, on the calls, and there's boxing people all over, there's MMA people all over, and this guy is headlining to this extent and not being laughed out of the building at this point.
Yeah.
Literally going in there and winning. In fact, I thought he was going to put Nate away in the first round, man. Like the way he was slamming him.
That was crazy. The
yeah.
first round was a lot.
It was crazy. I was like, now that would have been a bad look for Nate. If he just got smoked in the first round, that would have been a bad look. But man, you're absolutely right, Troy. Like, that's the thing that keeps striking you. Is like, dude, this guy just kind of made this thing manifest out of nothing, just he keeps doing it. And you can say, like, well, he's not beating real boxers. I know that people are going to hate on him, and you're right. The boxing traditionalists will always point to the guys we just watched last week, Bud Crawford and those types. He's not going to be that. But dude, he points out another aspect of the game, which is like, it's a money aspect. Like, he has it. He has that it thing, and he keeps doing it. He keeps showing up, man. He's vulnerable. He could fail, but he doesn't. So it's kind of a crazy thing to watch, man. And the fact that he's just like taking people along with him, like making people really, like Serrano. I mean, like, he did this for her, basically. It's just a crazy thing, isn't it? Like, to watch him continue to do this.
Yeah,
absolutely. Two things on what you guys were talking about there. Jake Paul does say this an awful lot. This, like, if you're a little kid, you can do anything because I can do anything. And I watched his Netflix, and that's kind of like the broad stroke of the piece as well. Do you think he is
out, apparently?
Yeah, I mean, it's very well done, but do you think he is an inspiration? Because that's all the feeling when he starts saying that stuff. I'm always like, is there people at home going, yeah, Jake, I can do this too? Because I just never feel as though there are.
I don't know. It's across that way. Yeah. I think there is, but it's almost a reluctance on some level. Like, all you can really do, because it's very internal, right? When you're thinking about this kind of process, and you think, my own internal thing on believing it is he's in league with the devil. No, I'm just kidding. But like, there's my thing is, like, there's a defiance. When he came in, I was like, what is this punk, like, coming into the fight game? He felt like an interloper into the boxing realm, but also the MMA realm, because he's only poking the MMA guys, at the time, and still, right? Like, he's still doing it. So he's kind of to both realms, but he's picking fights and he's doing this stuff. And, but yet he just keeps going. It's like and you see Logan show up, and it's kind of runs in the family, right? Because he's not only just wrestled the SummerSlam, he hops on a plane, shows up in his gear, and they're just like, hey, we won again. What do you know, man? This is great. What a night for the Pauls. And I'm like, it's kind of crazy. You don't see this thing happen. So it was reluctance for me to accept it, but I would have to say that my eyes are pretty wide open to it now. That you're like, wow, this is, I don't know if inspiring is the word, but he is showing something. You know what I mean? Something that's like, it should be like your self-belief and dedication, all that stuff. Maybe that should come across now through him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and PT, I don't know if we are the target audience for the inspiration. I mean,
I thought you're 17. Like,
right.
I thought that was,
yeah, I mean,
just turned 18.
What we fail to see is just how much Jake and Logan mean to a certain generation. They've been on them with Disney and YouTube and Vine and TikTok, and now he's taken the fans on this boxing
I love that
journey
you're
as well.
saying this because you're like, of all of us, like, what are you, like 20?
27.
All right, 27.
he's 13 years of
Grizzled
age.
veteran at this point.
Another thing. Sorry, I was meant to move on to this. You mentioned round one, and I was joking on the. Well, I wasn't joking. I was kind of forecasting, and I was like, if he comes in here and he just dusts Nate Diaz in the first round, I don't know how I'm going to handle that. And then it starts that way. I mean, he's pouring it on. Diaz looks at 6s and 7s. Then the second round happens. Like, he's kind of coming into it. Third, fourth, Diaz kind of picks up, has a good round. In the next round, Jake knocks him down. And the way he goes down, whatever way they shot it,
in the end.
like he goes through the ropes, and I was like, oh my God, is this how it all ends? So I guess the question is, considering those two, say, maybe low points the first round and the fifth for Nate, did it go better or worse than you imagined? Or pretty much exactly how you imagined?
Not exactly, but I would so not exactly, but I would say this was a very imagined. Like I think we all picked Paul, right? Like we were I think in the varying degrees of how it happened, like there was some of that I expected, some of it was a little unexpected. I did not expect him to weather that kind of storm in the first round. If he was getting hit like that, which he did, I thought he would just go out. It's a tribute to his chin that he didn't. You know what I mean? Like he was able to just absorb it. Because there was a couple of those shots, man, I was like, oh, this is done. You know, he's going to go out. But the fact he survives it, okay, you play right back into the cult of Diaz, especially because he did turn it on. I mean, even the third round was a little bit of a coin flip. I think it was Jake's round, but it was a closer round, right? Like, so he's kind of turning it on and going, you know, into the fight. And then in the fifth, that becomes the bigger issue because now he gets knocked down. And you're right. I saw him kind of try to catch himself, and then he goes through the rope. I'm like, oh no, not like this. And then there was that moment. But he kind of recovered again, you know, and starts turning it on again. So it wasn't the worst look, but I think that what impressed me most was the cardio of Jake Paul being able to keep going, the volume of his shots. And, you know, let's be honest, he was carrying the bigger power there too. Like he was the one, whenever there was a power shot, I thought it was coming from Jake's side. I know that Nate had a couple of, you know, you'd see Jake's head snap back or something like that. You knew he kind of caught him flush, but nothing was. I just didn't feel like he was ever going to load up and throw something that would knock him down. You know what I mean? So it kind of went the way I expected, but there was some surprises in there.
Did you think he was going to lock in the guillotine? Because part of me was like, right, the fight is over now. Like, I mean, the fight is as good as done. I was like, he might jump guillotine here just to say he did it. And
then he gets disqualified, right? Instead of like losing on the. That would have been a stroke of genius, actually.
Well, I guess like when we finish this fight off, it's Jake Paul saying the MMA thing again, and this was a story that kind of came about in the last 2 weeks. Nate was walking away from people initially over the first few days when they suggested it. Will there be an appetite for an MMA fight between these guys after this? That's what I wondered as soon as it was said.
Exactly same question. I personally don't need to see that.
Like, I don't feel a burning desire of vengeance. No. I need to see like Jake Paul submitted in 30 seconds by Nate Diaz.
I suppose in what Troy was saying, like, well, can you go and I don't think so though. Like, I think that would be a step too far. He's a very smart entrepreneur, right? Like, he's a very smart business guy, and I think that might be a step far. But then again, like, there's a little bit of you that's like, it's not like Nate's game is to wrestle you to the ground and like, you know, take you out of your game that way. Like, obviously he's a jiu-jitsu player and he's got tricks up his sleeve. He's got some, you know, he's got some moves in MMA, right? Like that would translate very well, but he's not like a crazy wrestler. So there is a little bit of me that's like, maybe it wouldn't actually go like so one-sided, you know what I mean? So I don't know, but my appetite for it's really not there. We'll see how it plays out because sometimes that grows on you as they talk and all that stuff. But I was kind of hoping, to be honest, man, when we were talking, I thought maybe this would be like the Lark that he goes out, Nate goes out, and then he's like, all right, time to go back to the UFC, and whatever was unresolved there, we pick up where we left off. If they're going to do the McGregor trilogy, I would have a bigger appetite for that probably. I think, but I'd have to really think about that more. But I think I would have a bigger appetite for that. And then you do have like Dustin Poirier, right, or something like that. Like you could still put that together. But I would rather he do something like that than fight Jake Paul again in